Hello there, and welcome to the Meaningful Stitch. This is episode 60, and I am Amy Palko, and I'm coming to you from Edinburgh, Scotland. And this is where I like to share my knitting practice and my knitting projects. Although I have something a little different for you today, but I'll get into that just shortly. First of all, I would like to share with you a card that I drew from the Wild Kuan Oracle deck. I always like to draw a card at the beginning of each one of these episodes. I think they're really beautiful ways of changing our perspective, seeing something new, reflecting something about ourselves, and particularly here something perhaps about our making practice. So this is the card that I drew. Isn't it gorgeous? It's from Alana Fairchild, and this is the deck here, the Wild Kuan Oracle. And this card is, She Rides with Wild Spirit Unbroken. You are a wild spirit. No matter how often you've been told no, been suppressed by rules and regulations, been denied a right to speak your crazy, beautiful truths, inside of you beats a persistent, loving force of life that will not be denied. I have been with you, my wild one, throughout every challenge to your free spirit, by your side, encouraging you to rise, believing in you. When you were shamed, denied, judged and ridiculed, I was there with you. I went through it all, right along with you. I knew that the time would come when you would be ready to rise above those experiences, to realize you were stronger than them and refuse to be put down. I wanted to be there waiting for that moment, whispering encouragement directly into your heart. I knew that the wild joy in you would soon kick off shackles of shame. I knew that no amount of criticism or disrespect could ever break the spirit of your heart. I knew that even if you doubted that at times, deep inside the heart, there was a spirit so wild that it could never be tamed. I know that it is only ever a matter of time before your wild spirit will rise and be free. Now isn't that a beautiful invitation for our creative self-expression and our making practice, our knitting practice, whatever kind of practice we're engaged in, but it's that invitation for our wild self, our wild soul to have full expression in the world and to do so unabashedly. So I really enjoy that, and I think that's a really lovely way to begin our episode. Now, I said that I had something a little bit different for you, so it begins with a story. So you might remember at the end of the previous episode, I had embarked upon knitting a sock. I was also knitting that beautiful lapwing collar by Alice Starmore, and both of those projects used very little needles, tiny little needles, toothpicks. And unfortunately, I think maybe I wasn't paying enough attention to the way in which I was knitting, or perhaps I wasn't mixing things up enough by using different heavier weights of yarn or larger needles. But the upshot of all of that was I was coming home on the train from visiting my daughter Aurora in Manchester, and I developed really very sore pains down both of my forearms. And so I didn't get very much knitting done at all, which is a shame because I love train knitting. So I had to put my knitting away, and I realised that when I picked my knitting back up the next day that this was not a comfortable thing, and so I had to put my knitting down. So eventually I realised that the pain wasn't actually coming from my forearms, it was actually coming from my elbows. And after a conversation with my dad, I think we identified, well, my dad said if the pain is coming from the outside of the elbow, it's tennis elbow, and if it's coming from the inside of the elbow, it is golfer's elbow. I'm calling what I had knitter's elbow. And yes, it was really pretty uncomfortable. And it did mean that I wasn't able to knit for pretty much a month. And well, if you've been around here for a while, you'll know that my knitting practice is absolutely core to my daily life, to my sacred practice, to my sense of well-being, to even how I identify myself as a knitter. So it was a really very uncomfortable experience, physically, obviously, but also it was a mentally challenging piece as well. So what I thought I would share with you then is kind of what I ended up doing over the course of that month. So, because there was lots of things that then happened and lots of things that I did, and it's all very creative and exciting and lovely, and I'm really excited to share all of that with you. And I think sometimes when we have our routine or our default somehow removed or shaken up somehow, it allows other things to come in. And so that's really what I want to share with you. Although, spoiler alert, I have picked up my needles. So the pain in my elbows is resolved now, and it really did take a month of putting my knitting needles down. But let me show you what I've been working on, what I've been making, because let's just say I lasted for about 2-3 days without doing something with my hands, and then I couldn't stand it any longer. So yes. Anyway, the first thing that I did isn't actually something which was involved in my making practice, but it was more around professional qualifications. I've been studying with the Faculty of Astrological Studies for a few years now, and I had decided that I was going to put myself forward for the Faculty of Astrological Studies certificate exam. So that was quite a large undertaking. It required quite a lot of different parts and pieces that needed to kind of come together, and that was taking a lot of time and energy and focus. And actually, you know, having this occur with my elbows, it kind of then took one of my main focuses from my daily practice out. So then it kind of created a little bit more space for the astrological work. And so I really dove very deeply into that, really wrestled with it, and worked very hard on making sure that that exam submission was the best it possibly could be. And perhaps, you know, I have various different qualifications, but I think I had decided after the last one, which was my PhD, which I finished, I think when I was about 31, so 15 years ago, that I wasn't going to be returning to that kind of study or these kinds of qualification processes. So to turn myself towards that again really did feel like a big challenge. But I have been studying astrology for, gosh, probably about 13 years now, and really formally in the last few years, just to try and make sure that I'm covering all my bases and I'm deepening into some of the areas that are really calling for my attention. And so to kind of synthesize that and bring it all together and work on it really intensively and create these exam papers and submit them, it felt like a huge achievement, a culmination point of a good few years. So that was one thing that I spent some of my additional energy that was freed up from not knitting. But another thing, and this is the thing that I really wanted to share with you, was that, as I said, after the first few days of not knitting, I decided that I couldn't stand it any longer, and I picked up my crochet hook. Now, I have never really considered myself to be a crocheter. I have knitted since I was probably about 5 years old. I don't remember learning how to knit. I know that my grandma taught me, and it was probably during a summer holiday because we would go and stay with my grandparents for a couple of weeks, and then we would go stay with my other set of grandparents for a couple of weeks during the summer holidays, which was quite handy because they both lived in the same street, so we basically just would go from one end of the street to the other end of the street. But I'm pretty sure that my grandma was the one that taught me how to knit. But like I said, I don't remember, but equally, I don't remember not knowing how to knit. I don't remember not knowing what to do with needles and yarn. And my grandma was not a crocheter, and so and my mum didn't crochet, so it's never really been something that's been necessarily taught to me or accessible to me or demonstrated to me. However, a few years ago, in fact, I think it was during the pandemic? It might have been during lockdown. My daughter, who is a crocheter, because she's just wonderful. She's just able to kind of turn her hand to many, many crafts. She just has that innate ability. But she taught me how to crochet a granny square. And I did a few of them and then just kind of put it down, didn't pick it back up again. And then I think in one of the lockdowns I made a good go at crocheting a granny stripe blanket. But really my crochet has never been particularly good. I've never really understood a crochet pattern. And yes, my crochet was really kind of limited to a granny square or a granny stripe. Well, over the course of the years, I feel as though that's really started to shift and change and develop. I've been reading more patterns. I've been understanding more about the stitches. I bought some crochet books that I've been reading. And this past month has, with this kind of more intensive focus on crochet rather than on knitting, it has really allowed me to improve, I think, how I would say is my fluency with with crochet. I think it's one thing to learn the language of something, but it's an entirely different thing to develop fluency. And I think fluency kind of requires immersion. And I feel as though I've immersed myself into the world of crochet. And so that's been really exciting and really lovely. The thing about crochet compared with knitting, for the sake of what was going on with my elbows, is that you are using, because your motions are so different, you're using different joints, different muscle groups, and so it wasn't straining my elbow in the same way. It was really my right elbow more than my left. My left was very mild, but my right elbow was really pretty problematic. And it was causing issues with things like going to the supermarket. I would normally get like a basket to carry my shopping, and that was becoming quite difficult. Pouring water from the kettle for my cups of tea was getting very challenging. So, but crochet was something that I could do a little bit more comfortably. And so I decided that I was going to tackle a project that I'd had my eye on for a very long time. And so I'm going to show you that just now. I got this crochet anthology from Pom Pom. I got this a wee while ago, a few months back, and I got it because it had this particular pattern in it that I really, really like. And it's called Limonata, and it's by Anna D. And here it is here. So you can see that it's made up of these individual motifs, which are then joined as you go. You can see here. Now this has been crocheted in Kelburn Woolens, and it's a blend, what does it tell me? Kelburn Woolens Mojave, and that is a cotton linen sport weight blend. Now I didn't have any of that. I don't even know if anybody stocks Kelburn Woolens in the UK. But I did have some sport weight in my stash, and it was a woolen sport weight. Let me get the skein. There it is. Simila Melange by BC Garn, and it's in black. So, and it's 100% organic wool. So I love this colour. I love this colour. I love this this blend. I do like black, but I do love the feel of this. So it's very soft and lovely. Now, here is how far I have gotten. Now, I've not finished it because, like I said, I've been developing my fluency with and practicing my tension, and this is how far I have gotten, which is quite far, I think. So here we go. Oh, completely blew myself out there. If I shuffled along here a little bit. So you can see these individual motifs here. It's crocheted from the bottom up, and I'm kind of crocheting it in strips, so I'm just kind of going along. So as you can see, I'm fairly far up, and then you start on the sleeves. So the sleeves are just kind of part of the, added onto the body, just like that. So I've got maybe like a couple more rows to go on both sides. and yeah, I'm really pleased with how it's going. I found it quite difficult to get gauge, and in truth I did not actually end up getting gauge. So, but what I did then do is I measured the width of the crochet motif, and I looked at what the suggested ease for the pattern was. See if I can find that, except I can't really, what did I do with the book? Oh, there it is, I put it back in the bag. So let me have a quick look and see what it says for the gauge. So one motif should be 6.5 centimetres or 2.5 diameters after blocking, and mine was bigger than that, which was a little frustrating. So it says it's to be worn with 7.5 centimetres or 3 inches of positive ease. And so size 2 would be a 41-inch bust. So with 3 inches of positive ease, that would be for a 38-inch bust. I do not have a 38-inch bust. I am much closer to a 41-inch bust. But when I measured my motifs and worked it out, I realised that I was closer to the measurements for the size 2 once we added in my gauge. I'm not making much sense there, sorry. Because the pattern is laid out in this way. So if I added up the number of motifs at the gauge that I got in order to get 44 inches, then I needed to do size 2. So that's what I did. I just made the adjustment rather than wrestling over trying to, you know, tighten up my gauge or drop down a crochet hook size or whatever. I decided I was just going to go for a slightly larger motif, and I was going to drop the size down to a size 2. And that is another thing that I've really kind of noticed about a crochet pattern, is it kind of invites in a lot more intuition, I suppose. It's not quite as directed as a knitting pattern. You know, even just with this kind of schematic with the individual motifs laid out, kind of that visual representation, it creates kind of a more, it's actually more invitational. It's more constructive, perhaps, and more trusting of the maker. So I actually really enjoy that, and I'm really pleased with how it's kind of working up. My only issue is that because it's black yarn, I really struggle to do the crochet motifs at night time. And over the course of the month of March, we were mostly at that point where we were still in GMT time, but daylight savings came in. So we had British summer time begin in the last weekend of March. And so that meant that we got our longer evenings. And oh my goodness, that's made such a difference. So now we have light much later on in the day than we were getting. And of course that's increasing all the time now. So I'm finding it a little bit easier to do these motifs in the evening now. But, and I don't know, it won't necessarily show up here. No, it's not really showing up. But I noticed that I had, well, maybe it might show there. Can you see this? This one is slightly different from this one. And that's because I had the last two skeins that I had were a different dye lot. Can you see the difference with this top layer here compared with the one below? Maybe only just slightly. There we go. And that's really disappointing. And so I kind of put it down for a while. If I hadn't, I would probably have finished it by now. But I felt a little bit disappointed about that. But I think I do have enough of the yarn that I have in order to complete it, but it will have this discernible difference in it. So what I've essentially decided is that I'm going to complete it, and then I'm going to over dye it using black, just to kind of create a greater consistency in the black fabric. So that's where I'm at with that. But that was one of my kind of major projects that I really spent a lot of time working on. And again, it's one of those projects that's really kind of helped me bring a little bit more fluency to my movements, my crochet movements. Another thing that happened during the month of March was that I attended the Scottish Wool Producers Showcase. It was based in Perth, in Civic Hall. So I got the train up and I had just such a lovely time. I'm going to share a little bit of footage here so that you can see just what a lovely event it was, and I can show you some of the yarns, and then I'll show you some of the yarn that I came home with and what I've done with it. So, here's the footage. Okay, so what did I buy? Well, first of all, actually, maybe I'll show you what I was given, because I had a lovely conversation with Susie of Lammermuir Wool. Now, I love I've actually got the bag here, Lammermuir Wool. I love Lammermuir Wool. Lammermuir is based in the Pentlands, which is not very far from Edinburgh. It's the hills just to the south and east of Edinburgh, and Susie has a flock of Shetland sheep. I think she has two flocks of Shetland sheep actually. And she just creates the most wonderful yarn. I mean, it's truly incredibly precious and so special. And she has a website, so you can go and check it out. I will link all of that in the description box below. But I had a lovely conversation with her, and we were talking about designing, and she offered me yarn support for a new design. And so this is the yarn that she has given me, and it's this yarn here. And so it's Lammermuir Wool Achnes Softest Blend DK, and it's this natural colourway. She also does do some hand dyed, but at the moment she's mostly just got just the most incredible range of natural shades. So it says on the back here on the label, an undyed luxurious yarn worsted spun from grey Shetland fleece blended with alpaca to create a soft and drapey yarn with great stitch definition, made in small batches with love. Shetland 80%, alpaca 20%. It's 100 grams skein. It's from the 2023 clip, and it's in the shade Loch Fleet, and you get approximately 230 meters or 252 yards per 100 grams. So can you see how beautiful that yarn is? The definition, the stitch definition is glorious. The handle of this is very, very soft. It's going to feel absolutely delicious to wear. So I have an idea for what I want to do with this. I did have one idea, and I started on it and then realised that my idea was just going to use so much yarn and was going to end up incredibly heavy, and it just wasn't going to work. So sometimes you just have to admit defeat and have a bit of a rethink, and I've done that, and I have another idea for what I want to do with this yarn. But so Susie gave me 4 skeins of this, and yeah, I'm gonna have a go at swatching this up and yeah, giving this new design idea a go. I have another design idea, and it's actually for a top that I made a prototype for last year, and there was some issues with it, and so I'm trying to resolve those issues, and I'm going to crochet and knit. That gives you a bit of a hint. A second sample, and I'm going to use Kinross lace. Kinross lace is a blend that's been spun by or been commissioned by Wee County Yarns. I think it gets spun, well, does it say? I was going to say spun by Todd and Duncan. Should just trust myself. Todd and Duncan, which is an amazing spinner up in Kinross, and they mostly do cashmere, but this is lamb's wool. But they've kind of taken, I think, their cashmere spin know-how and applied it to the lamb's wool. So it's an incredibly, it just makes such a soft yarn, even softer than it feels in the skein after it's been washed, and it's already very soft in the skein. But yes, they've decided to increase their colour range in the Kinross lace. So now there's now 15 colours available in the lace base. So you get 650 meters for 100 grams. It's 100% wool, and this shade is Beadlet. It's this beautiful rich maroon shade that I just absolutely adore. So I got a couple of skeins of that for, like I said, to try and kind of nut out some of the design issues in this top. So I'm quite excited to kind of crack on with that. And then the other things that I was given a skein of yarn from Eva of the Scottish Yarn Festival, and they have their own custom blend, which is a beautiful blend of Shetland and Cheviot. And she, in fact, I can show you this here. I've just put all of these, no, I'm not reaching out of the screen there. But she gave me this skein of this yarn here, and it's their new marled base. Now, what is the name of it? Because I've forgotten. It's called Burnham, as in Burnham Wood, which you'll know if you're familiar with your Shakespeare. So it's this beautiful marled yarn where they've taken like some of the natural shades and combined it with one of the, I think it's Anderson, one of the dyed shades. So it's really pretty. So I got some of that, and I got 3 balls of yarn from various different makers. So I got, and I'm just going to show you the little balls because I've already used all of this yarn for a project, which I'm going to show you in a second. But I got this, oops, this, which is 100% Scottish mohair, and this is from Gardswell Farm. And this just absolutely gleams. The gloss on it is just glorious. And you might have seen in the footage that they had some Hebridean, they had some Scottish mohair, and then they had a blend of the two. But I decided to get a ball of the 100% Scottish mohair. So it's a 50-gram ball that I got. And then I also got a 50-gram ball of this gorgeous Hebridean. Look at the beautiful chocolatey brown, really dark espresso. And it had this really lovely little label, and it was the Gunpowder Flock DK, pure Hebridean wool, 100 meters to 50 grams. And this was, it was actually Mothy and the Squid that normally at these shows sells hand-dyed yarn, but this was some of their neighbours' flock that they had spun up and had brought to the market. So that was really fun. So on this label it says, Brian and Roz graze a small flock of pedigree Hebrideans on their small holding near Kames on Argyle's secret coast, where the sheep enjoy fine views across the Kilbride Bay to Arran. The flock name derives from the Victorian-era gunpowder magazine that was part of the Kames Powder Works. The sheep were hand-sheared in the field for this batch of wool, and carefully selected fleeces were carded and spun on restored vintage machinery at the Halifax Spinning Mill in Yorkshire. So, I hope you're getting a sense of like how incredibly special these yarns are and how finite they are, because we're talking about very small flocks of sheep, and so very finite amounts of fibre to then have spun up and then bring to something like the Scottish Wool Producers Showcase. And a lot of these people who are selling, businesses that are selling their yarn, they don't necessarily have a web presence to sell their wool. So the only way in which you can kind of really access this, these products, are actually to attend an event. And I don't know of any other event quite like the Scottish Wool Producers Showcase. So it's one that I feel very passionate about supporting, because I think being able to really champion these small producers of yarn, of wool, of fibre, is just an incredibly important thing to do. So I would encourage you to like follow up on the links, go and explore, and also to have a wee look, if there's anything going on in your local neighbourhood, and what yarn is being made available in these kind of small and precious batches close by you. And yeah, encouraging you to support these small producers. But this is the last thing this is the last one that I bought, and this is very precious yarn indeed. So this is from Brawley Muir Farm. It is 80% Hebridean, 10% cashmere, and 10% Valois black nose. Now, I know that the Valois was bought in to add to the blend, and the Hebridean flock and the cashmere goats are all owned on, you're all tended to on this on Brawley Muir Farm, and I know that Matteo, who has that farm, has just the most beautiful connection to his flock and to his land. He's also a beekeeper, and so he's got some honey there as well, and very kindly gave me a little honey truffle from his own, made from his own honey when I was there. And so this is, I don't know, there's an energy to this kind of yarn that's not necessarily going to be available when you purchase, you know, through the bigger producers. It just holds a really, yeah, it just holds a really special place in my heart. It feels like it's been made with heart and soul, because it has. So let me show you what I've been busy making. So I wasn't able at this point to knit, and so I was still very much in my crochet only phase. And so I decided, you know, that we've got these, like the Sophie shawl, for example, where you can take like a small amount of yarn and create a usable accessory with what you have. And I think in the Sophie shawl pattern, you're encouraged to weigh your yarn so that you can figure out when to begin your decreases, and that way being able to use up all of your yarn. And I really liked that idea, so I decided to apply that to a crochet concept. And this is what I ended up with. I'm calling this the Dost, D-O-S-T, the Dost shawl. Dost is an old Scots word for darling. So this is the Dost shawl. And as you can see, I did manage, where's the little thing? There it is. I did manage to use up the majority of my 50-gram ball, because I really did want to use as much as possible of that very precious yarn. So basically, I managed to figure out, like, with the increases and the decreases, because the decreases in crochet I've discovered uses up a little bit more yarn than the increases. So I managed to figure out percentages for your yarn, for your increases, then your decreases, and still allowing you enough yarn to do a little border. So just to show you how it looks, move my long hair out the way. So yes, you can either wear it like this, or you can tie it. But I thought it was really cute, and I really liked it, and that's why I've called it the Darling Shawl. I really like this this edging. It's almost, I don't know, it almost gives me a sense of like it being floral somehow. So and also it gave me an experience of like, well, what does this yarn feel like kind of next to your skin? Because I know that a lot of people are quite cautious about rustic yarn, and a lot of people are unable or feel uncomfortable wearing any kind of wool that's not perhaps superwash merino next to skin, particularly around your neck. I don't have that issue at all, thank heavens. and I think actually the more rustic yarns actually tend to keep us a little bit warmer. Oh, that's certainly my experience anyway. So yes, this feels lovely next to my skin. I am aware that for some it wouldn't necessarily feel as comfortable, but the beautiful thing about this pattern is that you would be able to basically choose any skein at all in your stash, and you would be able to make a beautiful little shawl. So I then applied it to the other yarns. So here is the Gunpowder Flock Hebridean. I really should have tied my hair up for this now, I'm realising, but never mind. There we go. And again, I really like the feel of this, but it is, like I said, more rustic. But I think the point of you know, showing you all of this is like you can use some really precious skeins and use up the majority of them. I use like a little jeweler's scale. So at least a tiny one that does really small amounts and very kind of specific. And I'm able to use that to measure my yarn accurately, so I can see exactly how much yarn I've used and how much I've got left. So so I would recommend that kind of scale for being able to accurately measure your yarn quantities. But isn't this pretty? Oh, I'm just really pleased. And this was, so the Burl Muir skein was actually 100 grams, but it was a little bit more thicker weight than the other two were. So it's made a slightly larger shawl. Here we go. So these, and I would describe these as shawlettes, I think. You could just wear that down like that. Yes, I would describe these as shawlettes rather than full shawls. But yes, I'm really pleased with how this has worked out. And like I said, I really love the little border there. And then I have one more to show you, because I also used the yarn from the Scottish Wool Producers Showcase in the Burnham shade to create a larger one. So again, it was 100 grams, but it was closer, I think, to a true DK. Here we are. And again, just, you can tie it if you like. Just like that. So I'm really pleased with how this has turned out. It is, I think, quite a simple design, but yeah, I have it written up in my notebooks and everything, so I'm gonna write it up and get it tech edited and bring it out. So so yeah, let me know if this is something that you would be interested in knitting, and whether you're as excited about this as I am, because I think, you know, like I said, we could take really any of our most precious skeins in our stash and make something like this. And it's not super complex crochet. I think it's something that, you know, even a beginner would be able to do. Perhaps if you're one of those knitters like me, who used to only be able to do a granny square, then maybe this would be like the next step up to begin exploring. So I hope you can see then how beautiful these yarns are that I picked up, and yeah, I'm so pleased that I managed to find a really beautiful way to celebrate them and honour them and create these gorgeous little shawlettes. So here we go. So that's the Dost shawl. So that was another thing that I got busy doing. And there was another event. So it wasn't just the Scottish Wool Producers Showcase that I went to this year, or this past month, because a couple of weeks after that, just at the beginning of April there, I went to the Woolly Good Gathering, which was in Edinburgh. And this time it was being held at Central Hall, which is in Tollcross, which is a pretty central location in Edinburgh. It had moved from Summer Hall, which was where the previous event had been held, the Woolly Good event last year. There has been quite a lot of issues with that particular venue, unfortunately. There's been quite a lot of financial turmoil for them, and it's kind of made hosting events there quite challenging and problematic. So the organisers of the Woolly Good Gathering managed to find this alternative venue, and so that's where we were all gathered. So last weekend? I think it was last weekend. My weekends are beginning to blend. Oh dear. So yes, that was wonderful, and it was and that event felt for me to be more focused on kind of the social connections and meeting up with friends. My daughter Aurora came up from Manchester for it, so I spent a lot of time with her, and which was just really, really lovely. And yeah, there was just so much going on that actually I got through the whole thing and then realised I hadn't recorded any footage at all. So so my apologies for that, but I can show you what I got. And so let me take you through that. So what's the first thing I bought? The first thing I bought actually was this pom-pom. So Toft were there, and they are a wonderful crochet company. They do those beautiful like Edward's Menagerie books that have got amazing, I think it's amigurumi, and these little characters, animals. They've even got vegetables and flowers and all kinds of things. So they've got these beautiful pattern books. They have their own yarn, which is delightful, and they have these gorgeous pom-poms. And I didn't know this, but they produce Toft Quarterly, which is here's some of the, try not to show you the too much there. Try not to show you the pattern. There we go. They have really beautiful patterns, which are a combination. Some of them are crochet and some of them are knitted. I love this little bag actually. See there. So yes, so they have a wide variety of lovely designs, and I really liked how they were laying it out, how they were bringing together these two beautiful crafts. This particular edition was kind of all about sort of that beautiful pottery style, you know, that brings together the shades of blue with the white. So yes, I picked up Toft Quarterly as well, and they very kindly gave me this lovely bag too, which has got a crochet hook and knitting needles on it. And then the yarn that I bought that first day, I only bought these 2 skeins that first day. This is from Zakami, and this is their baby suri alpaca and silk base, and it's a DK weight. It's 225 meters per 100 grams, and it's in the colorway Cycling on the Milky Way. Although, do you know what I just saw when I looked at this? I'm just going to hold it like this for a while. What I saw when I looked at this was flamingos. I have a beautiful flamingo feather that I picked up when Mum and Dad and I went to Nîmes, and we went in France, and we went to this most amazing bird reserve that just had all of these flamingos, and I took so many photographs, and it was just one of those experiences that you know will live with you for the rest of your life. And I have a feather that is kind of that soft sort of blue-grey with that beautiful shade of pinky peach. So I got 2 skeins of it. I have a bit of an idea of what I might want to do with it, but yeah, I haven't really kind of given myself the time or the space to sort of fully consider that. So, but there we go, that's what I got. And then the other thing that happened on that day, so this is the first day of the festival, which was the Friday. Aurora and I went to a wonderful talk by Madeline Shepherd, who is a machine knitter here in Edinburgh. And she's gave a great talk all about machine knitting. Now, I have never done machine knitting before. I don't own a knitting machine, but I am really intrigued by this, and that's why I decided that to book the place on the talk. I think everybody else in the audience, apart from Aurora and I, had all had some experience with machine knitting. And so perhaps we were the newbies, which is fine. It's good to be a newbie. But it was so inspiring, and she just shared so much of her knowledge and her wisdom, her stories and her enthusiasm, and I think we all left feeling, you know, really excited actually about the creative possibilities. She showed us some of her pieces that she had machine knitted towards the end of the talk, and they were just incredible. Just loved seeing, like I said, what the possibilities and the potential of it is. So I think she's running workshops here in Edinburgh, and so I'm going to maybe have a wee follow up on that, and maybe dabble a little bit in machine knitting. So yes, that was quite exciting. And then that evening there was the social, which was held at the Edinburgh Printmakers, and so we got to catch up with Rebecca Clow of the Creabea and Rebecca Anderson of Songbead, and yeah, just lots of my lovely friends, and we got to sit round and have a really good blether and a good catch up. So I really appreciated that. It was really nice. And then the next day went back and I bought a little bit more. So let me show you what I got the second day. So there was this wonderful stall which was all about embroidery. See, I'm getting into all the crafts now. Into embroidery, and they had like wool and designs to add. I think Sarah from the It's a Sarah podcast calls them woolly tattoos. But I bought this instead, which is this gorgeous piece of linen with all of the instructions and everything, and the design, and yeah, all of the hoop is in here. The linen that I chose is here, and all of the lovely floss is there as well. And the company is called Love, Live, Give Art. So, and I got this nice drawstring bag to keep it all together, so I got that. Creation Mill were there from Langholm. I'm really intrigued about the work they're doing, so I had a good blether with them as well, and I came away with this beautiful textured yarn. I've been thinking a lot about Lerka Bagger's Close Knit and Knit It Out books, and she uses a lot of kind of funky and interesting yarns just to kind of mix things up a little bit. So I bought some of this to add to some projects in the future. Botanical Yarn were there, and I got this amazing, it's kind of ultraviolet mohair, silk mohair. So it's really beautiful. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do with it, but after I picked it up I couldn't put it back down, so it just had to come home with me. And then the other things that I bought were actually from Jameson's, and they had so I had gone there specifically to pick up some yarn for my friend Jen, but while I was there I'd actually clocked an image on the front of a book, and I didn't look at the book, but towards the end of the Friday I did actually end up going back and having a look at it properly. This was the book here, Simply Shetland 2, and that was the image on the cover, and I think that is just absolutely stunning. I think that's so elegant. So I ended up going back and having a proper look at it, and I found that particular pattern, and then look what the pattern is called. It's the Aurora Kimono. So my daughter, of course, is called Aurora, and she was there with me, and so we decided it was meant to be, so I had to buy the book. So when I got home, I had to look through my stash to see if I had anything that would do for that particular project, and I found that I had 2 cones in these colours here. So one is this kind of brighter red, and one is this kind of deeper maroon. So I decided that I would really like to knit my Aurora kimono using these 2 cones. I think this top one here is a Holst, and I think this like Holst Super Soft, and I think this one here is Woolly Knits British Wool. So either that, or they might both be Woolly Knit British wool, actually. Anyway, the pattern calls for like a third colour, because if you look, you'll see you've got kind of the gold and the black, and then there's like a red trim around the collar and around the hem. So I went back to Jameson's on Saturday with my colours attached, and I decided that I was going to get the gold. So mine is going to have a gold trim around the collar and around the hem. So that's very exciting. The actual book, there's other really lovely photographs in the book here. Designs in the book here. Let me see if I can find. I really, again, this is quite simple, but I really like the way that it looks. Like, look at that. I love the drape of that. I would absolutely wear something like that. That's called the Maud Vest, and it's by Carol Lapin. Some of the patterns are a little bit more outrageous. Got to check out those curls. Anne Curly Jacket by Betsy Westman. And this rather lovely piece, Rosemary Pullover by Susan Rainey. Rather pretty. What I would say is that these patterns are really quite simply and with a real eye to brevity. They're not the kind of patterns that are going to hold your hand and take you through it bit by bit like you often get in patterns in Ravelry. That's the Glen Ellen Jacket, again by Carol Lapin. Yes, you're going to have a certain knitting knowledge, I think, to be able to knit these patterns. And then I also picked up another book there, which is called Simply Knit. And let me find some of these. I love this. Absolutely loved this. Metamorphosis. Isn't that stunning? I think that's absolutely beautiful. Or this. Barcelona. So yes, everything. And this one here, Obi. And what's that one called? Bounced Check. So yeah, I really like a lot of these. Optically delusional. So yes, I think there's some fun to be had here with these beautiful designs. So I picked up those two also. And I think that's everything that I bought, actually. I had a really nice time. It was lovely to catch up with everybody and to purchase some pretty skeins and, like I said, attend the talk by Madeline. So yeah, that was fantastic too. Now, what else did I do? Because at that point, oh yes, that was just last weekend. I decided that I was feeling quite enthusiastic about design and about, you know, what I'd been working up over the course really of the last year, but hadn't then really brought anything forward into publication. So my last design that I shared was the Gither cowl. And I then brought out a scarf version, and just integrated that into the pattern. But the last time I brought out something brand new, well, that was about a year ago. But I have been, as you know, working on lots of other projects. And one of those projects I've been calling the Burl, B-I-R-L, Burl, which is Scots for like a spin or a twirl, a dance. And this was a design that was based on a shawl that my grandma gave me that she knitted for herself, probably in the 50s, 60s. And it's all over mesh knitted lacework with a open work central spine and lots of fringing. So this is my version. And I just finished adding, so that's one of the other things I've been doing while my while my elbows have been sore, is I added all of the additional fringing onto my Burl shawl. This is glorious yarn. This is Sweet Flax by Ginger Twist. And love this so much, which is a baby alpaca linen silk blend. It feels amazing. The drape is glorious, and yeah, this color is Lallybroch, which I absolutely adore. So yeah, I just really like how this has worked out. So I've also got the central openwork spine. I've got a series of eyelet rows, and then I began with just the fringing at the edging, and then I added an additional couple of layers. Now the thing with the eyelets, of course, is that you can then add your fringing to any part of the shawl that you please, and equally, if you don't want like the heavy fringe, then you could just add it to the border and nowhere else. So that's what I've been working on as well, and I've been looking at the pattern, kind of going back over it, and I realised that because I haven't really looked at this since last summer, I really needed to knit a second version for myself to make sure that my pattern makes sense, to double check all of my measurements, for the yarn quantities, for the stitch counts. So I popped back into Ginger Twist just yesterday, and I picked up 2 skeins of Sweet Flax in this glorious colourway here, which is Design for the Decade, which is this kind of variegated pink, which is just beautiful. And I cast it on yesterday, and I haven't made a huge amount of progress, but you can see a little bit of the variegation there because it's just so pretty. So it has a integrated I-cord edging, and it's knitted top down, as you can see. It's knitted back and forth. Of course it is. This is a shawl, and we've got this very simple eyelet lace, and then we've got these bands of stockinette stitch. So I'm really pleased with this and really excited to be able to kind of bring it all together, and I'm hopefully going to get this out really soon. So I think this will be what comes out next. But I'm just thrilled with it. It kind of feels a little bit like a feather boa. If a shawl crossed a feather boa, I think this is what it might look like. But I thought it's joyful. I love the way it moves. It literally dances. Yeah, I'm really pleased with it. So that's what I've been working on as well. And yeah, and then I decided that I was going to, well, as you saw there with that tiny little piece of knitting there, is that I was discovering that my elbows were no longer causing me discomfort, and so I decided that I needed to cast on a new sample for that, but my only 3.5mm needles were otherwise occupied on the Soho square that I had been knitting. That's a pattern by Jackie Rose, and so I was knitting it using some black tweed yarn 4-ply from New Lanark Spinning, which I don't really know exactly what's going on with them just now. They said they were stopping, and I'm not sure whether it's still available now or not. Anyway, I had picked up a cone. In fact, I was given a cone for my birthday a couple of years ago by my auntie, and so I decided to use that, and I was going to mix things up a little bit by just adding thin stripes rather than the thicker blocks of colour, as you would find in the pattern. However, I did some calculations and had discovered that I wasn't going to have enough of the black tweed to finish the whole project. And so I decided at that point that my Soho square was actually going to be a Soho triangle. And I was so close to finishing. I really just had like, you know, the ever decreasing stitch count on the short rows kind of coming to a point. So that was what I started to work on, and I finished it, and I washed and blocked it yesterday and took it off the mat this morning so that I could show it to you. But here we are. Oh dear, I'm blowing out terribly again, but there we are. This is my Soho triangle because I cast it off rather than continuing on with the knowledge that I was going to run out of yarn, and also that it wasn't actually a yarn that was readily available. My friend Jen did offer me her cone of the same, but I said no. I think we'll just leave it at this. I will retrieve my 3.5 Chiaogu needle, which is the one I prefer for shawls, and yes, I will crack on with the sample for the Burl. But here's those thin stripes. I've used a boucle alpaca, which had some leftovers from another project that I had done with this particular yarn. It is a hedgehog fibres yarn, and it was in the colourway Cinder. And I picked it up in the bargain bin at Stephen and Penelope when I went there pre-pandemic, 2019, October 2019, I think. I picked that up, or it might even have been the year before. Anyway, so I've got kind of like a fluffy stripe, and you can really see the tweedy flecks. The tweedy flecks are kind of like orange and like a steely blue. So the steely blue is very much matched by the fluff. And I just used a stretchy cast off, knitting two together through the back loop after the row where I had resolved all of the short rows. And it has created, as you can see, it's still a very substantial shawl, but it's not going to be doubled over like it would be with the squares. But it still creates, I think, quite a substantial shawl, and I really like it. The yarn itself, it had a lot of spinning oil in it and a lot of excess dye, so a lot came out in the wash. However, as I said, I've just literally taken it off the mat this morning, and it does still have a little bit of a machine oil smell to it. Not overpowering, but it does have a little bit, so I might have to give it another wash. And yeah, give it. I had actually washed it in dish detergent, a nice eco one with a pomegranate scent, because that's what I like to use when I'm washing the dishes. But I might give it another wash. I think maybe using some eucalyptus or something, and see what I can do about that. So yes, that's my Soho triangle. So I did manage to finish that off, and I cast something on, which was this. And I am knitting, oh, is that the right way around? Yes, it is the right way around. I began a Vertices Unite by Stephen West, because in my experience, when our knitting has moved through a bit of a low ebb, there is nothing quite like bringing it back into full expression than casting on a Stephen West shawl. And weirdly, the Vertices Unite shawl is one of those that I have not knitted, and everybody else seems to have knitted already. So it's a modular knit. I have some beautiful yarn from the Yarn Collective in their 4-ply, and it was a collection of yarns of colours that had been curated by Melody Hoffman of Bee Mandarins. And in fact, maybe I should go and see if I've left it through in the other room. Bear with me, I have got the bag now. This is a beautiful embroidered bag by Pajauta Makes, and it was a lovely gift from my friend Alexandra a couple of years ago. And this is the yarn that I'm using. So this is a skein left over from that beautiful wrap. Was it the Broom wrap? Scotch Broom wrap by Woolen Pine that I knitted. Well, I had a skein left, I think it's called Brunia, that shade. And then these are the other colours that I'm using. This is Poppy. It's the only one I can really remember. I think it's Poppy, Hibiscus, Hellebore, Brunia, and something else. Can't remember. But, so these are the colours. See, balance them against my chest. There we go. So these are the colours that I'm going to be using for my Vertices Unite. I have also caked up this beautiful skein of Miss Babs mohair that was a gift sent to me by a lovely viewer of the podcast, which was, just look at this, it was a Rhinebeck special colourway, and I thought it went really well actually with these other colours. So I'm going to try and integrate that, I think, into the design as well, because I think that it just has 5 colours, and obviously adding the mohair in will be 6, but I think I can make it work. So anyway, there we go. That's the, look at these. Isn't that so pretty? So I'm really excited about this. It's very gentle knitting. It's not requiring too much of me, and that's really just where I'm at the moment, as I'm still, I don't have pain anymore in my arms. I don't have an issue with my elbow on either side. I am managing to go to the supermarket with my shopping basket, and I am now managing to knit again. So I think sometimes, we do need to recognise those warning signs of pain and discomfort and make adjustments. I think sometimes those adjustments might be, for example, moving from knitting to crochet. Maybe it means that we need to switch up the needle sizes that we are using most often. Maybe it means using a different weight of yarn. Or sometimes it means even changing up our technique entirely. So moving from throwing to picking, from English style to continental style knitting. Sometimes it means giving the brioche a break, or whatever it is. Sometimes our knitting practice, as with all creative practice, but sometimes our practice is asking us to switch something up. We're being asked to put something aside, give it a rest, put it into hibernation, so to speak, and redirect our focus, shift our way of showing up, and in so doing, I think we can be greatly rewarded. And I hope that's what I've been able to show you all today. So I've got a little reading for you, which I hope you enjoy. It's from Women Who Run with the Wolves, which is one of my favourite books. In fact, I love it so much it's falling apart. I think this is actually one of the books that I've given away the most to friends and family, and because I just keep thinking everybody should own a copy of this book. It's so good. So the section that I've chosen to share with you is at the start of a chapter called Clear Water, Nourishing the Creative Life, and it's all about creativity. Creativity is a shape changer. One moment it takes this form, the next that. It is like a dazzling spirit who appears to us all, yet is hard to describe, for no one agrees on what they saw in that brilliant flash. Are the wielding of pigments and canvas, or paint chips and wallpaper, evidence of its existence? How about pen and paper, flower borders on the garden path, building a university? Yes, yes. Ironing a collar well, cooking up a revolution? Yes. Touching with love the leaves of a plant, pulling down the big deal, tying off the loom, finding one's voice, loving someone well? Yes. Catching the hot body of the newborn, raising a child to adulthood, helping raise a nation from its knees? Yes. Tending to a marriage like the orchard it is, digging for psychic gold, finding the shapely word, sewing a blue curtain. All are of the creative life. All these things are from the wild woman, the rio abajo rio, the river beneath the river, which flows and flows into our lives. So I have encountered lots of different forms of creativity, I think, over this past month. I hope that your creative life is meeting you well just now, and that maybe some of what I've shared is inspiring for you to go off and explore a little bit more. So I'm going to leave you just now, but hopefully I'll be back much sooner than I was last time. And in the meantime, take good care of yourselves, and I'm sending you lots of love.